Welcome to the first edition of Between Two Great Lakes, a podcast by Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper. I'm your host, Adam Zaremski. Now, New York is a Great Lakes state, and we want to highlight and talk about all things related to that idea. From important advocacy efforts, restoration projects, and fun things to do throughout the Blueway, which are spots that give people access to the water. So thank you for listening on today's show. If you're not already familiar with this acronym, you'll be hearing about it a lot more, and we'll educate you and let you know what you need to do to watch out. But PFAS is the first thing we'll be highlighting. I have Elizabeth Cute here. She is our Senior Manager for Community Engagement and our go-to source for anything related to PFAS and these chemicals. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
I'm good, Adam. How are you?
Doing very well. So like I said, we're looking into this, and you've been studying this for a while, the PFAS.
Yeah, I've been learning a lot about PFAS the last few years while working at Waterkeeper, starting really following some of the drinking water regulations in New York State, but it's expanded since then, what I've been learning and keeping my attention on as things are really moving rapidly this last year.
And so first thing, the PFAS is PFAS or PFOS, but it's an acronym, and I'm hoping you could tell us what that acronym stands for.
PFAS, the letters PFAS, stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Most people pronounce it PFAS. PFOS is just one type of PFAS. Most people will say PFOS, spelling it out, or some people say PFOS, but that is just one type of PFAS. It's a really large, diverse class of man-made chemicals of over 9,000 compounds, but PFAS, the PFAS acronym, is that umbrella name or term.
What are they? What are PFAS?
So they're man-made chemicals. They are often referred to as forever chemicals, as they don't naturally break down in the environment. They have very strong bonds from a chemical standpoint. They came into popularity in 1950s or 60s, I believe.
And what were they used for?
They were used for industrial and consumer product purposes. The application of PFAS made products waterproof, stain-proof, heat-resistant. So those properties were pretty advantageous for things like firefighting foam or rainproof clothing. Non-stick cookware was a big one, the Teflon pans. And that's where a lot of, the average person would be exposed to PFAS. Some of those other uses were job place oriented. So if you were a firefighter, you might have PFAS exposure from using the foam, but your average person wouldn't be exposed to firefighting foam very often. So some of those consumer products is where people started to get exposed, and then over time some health issues started to pop up in areas where either these PFAS were being created. So there was some environmental exposure from pollution or leaks, or they're being exposed on a daily basis by some of the different products they use. And PFAS are even found in cosmetics, so things that people are applying to their skin, to their face, chapsticks and things. So right onto your lips and your mouth. So there's a lot of vectors for exposure.
So some communities started having issues and were curious about their water sources. Any within New York that you can recall?
One example was in New York itself, a drinking water crisis in Hoosick Falls. And this was one of the first stories I read about when I was learning about PFAS. And this was a community that had a industrial facility that was making PFAS and using PFAS, specifically PFOA. And in 2015, members of the community were bringing forth different health concerns that they were noticing, up to, professionals town councils, eventually up to the EPA. And, they were experiencing different cancers and rashes, and they wanted to know what was going on. And some of those folks even tested their own water to try to figure out what was going on. And what was alarming to me reading about this community experiencing these issues was, it's 2015 and there's still a big lack of regulation related to these very harmful chemicals. So it really caught my interest and attention, and I've really enjoyed learning more about it and hoping to help others learn about it so that we can continue to, make smarter choices and control these substances to protect our health.
Now, Western New York, too, has had some issues. I'm thinking in the Niagara Falls region, Air Reserve Station, I believe.
Yeah, so once we, as a water keeper, we started to get more involved in learning about PFAS locally. We knew that New York State was going to be regulating two types of PFAS in drinking water, PFOA and PFOS. But we wanted to know in what other waterways in the surface waters were PFAS present. And through a project with Waterkeeper Alliance, we joined over 100 different keepers and tested some different streams and rivers throughout the country. And we tested a handful in Western New York and had some elevated levels. And one in particular, like you mentioned, was in Niagara County along Cayuga Creek.
And how was this site in particular chosen?
We picked this sampling site because we knew of, past known groundwater contamination. Due to that firefighting foam, like I mentioned before, there's an airport and an air base up in Niagara Falls, and Cayuga Creek runs right under that airport and that air base. So it had some known groundwater contamination due to the use of that PFAS type of firefighting foam, and we were curious to test upstream and downstream of that location just to see what were the surface water levels.
What did those results show?
Downstream saw some elevated PFAS levels, and which was very, kind of alarming. And now we're starting to sample some more sites, definitely bringing those results up to the DEC and other folks so that they know what's happening. There's other data being collected regionally, so we're trying to do our due diligence and learn about what's happening so that we can inform the public and other folks that might be interested to learn what's happening in our water. Are our waterways safe? What is in our water?
Sure. I guess for people wondering, should people be scared? And I guess if exposed to these, what can potentially happen? What have some of the studies shown as far as health effects?
I would definitely be concerned. The health issues related to PFAS are pretty serious, but those types of health issues occur due to repeated exposure or elevated exposure. I'd be most concerned about the drinking water that people are consuming or types of exposure that may be occurred through your profession. And those risks should be, provided to you by your employer. But knowing more about your drinking water is a really great first step to learn and to protect yourself.
And how would people know more about their drinking water and what's in it? I'm just wondering, is there some sort of documentation out there that they can access?
So you can all find drinking water reports from your water supplier if you're on public water. If you have a private well, you'd have to do your own testing to know what type of PFAS could be in your drinking water. But public water suppliers in New York State have to test for PFOA and PFOS currently. And if you Google City of Buffalo drinking water report or Erie County drinking water report or wherever you live, you can find your most recent drinking water report online. It's a really great resource. Learn about where your water comes from, what types of things they are testing for. It's all regulated. And then you can see the levels of those two types of PFAS. And currently, New York State, the maximum level that those two types of PFAS can reach without action occurring, like a cleanup action, is 10 parts per trillion.
What would happen if it was higher than that total?
If it was over that, there'd be action taken. But currently, there are no drinking water reports in our area that are elevated above that maximum contaminant level of 10 parts per trillion. That is reassuring. And just last week, the EPA released their proposed national primary drinking water regulation, which addresses the whole country, and each state has to match those levels they're proposing. So New York will have to drop those maximum contaminant levels down to 4 parts per trillion. That will protect our drinking water even more. And that national regulation includes some additional types of PFAS. So that's, really great steps in the right direction. And New York State isn't, waiting for those national levels. They've been one of the states really kind of paving the path forward, one of the first states to regulate for 2 types of PFAS. And we're waiting on some final regulations for 23 additional PFAS in our drinking water. So, that is a really great first step to protect our health.
Is there anyone that people can contact if they have these concerns or if they want to make their voices heard, like state regulators, federal or local officials?
Folks can contact their local representatives and let them know, what issues matter to them and what they'd like to see. Let them hear from you. Give them an email or give them a call and let them know that you're concerned about PFAS. Make your voice heard.
And you've been updating our website, too, with this information. So if people want to go there, they can go to bnwaterkeeper.org and search for PFAS. You've been doing that right along over the years. So that seems like a pretty good resource if people want to start there and then go beyond.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying to make this really complex, very, scientific information that can get confusing. We're trying to distill it down to a more digestible type of resource so folks can feel informed, feel like they have a step that they can take to, either protect themselves or get involved in some of the solutions. And, it's really important that we all come together on this. There's a real need to control and remediate this type of pollution, and the effort that it will take to, eliminate the production and use of these chemicals is going to be, complex, expensive, and government cannot, solve it alone. We really need to push for more producer responsibility and accountability and, hearing the voice and concerns of the public and having, a strong group of advocates is a really great way to take action and make change. And we've seen this in New York. We've seen it in Western New York. And I think this is a really great time for everybody to stand up and let folks know what matters to them and what we want to see change to protect our health of, our current and future generations and protect our waterways. So definitely keep your eyes and ears open for PFAS-related pollution or regulations. It's not going to go away anytime soon, so definitely something to get a little familiar with.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. It was great talking with you.
That was Elizabeth Cute, our Senior Manager for Community Engagement. So I want to remind people that while we obtain grant funding for projects, donations from people are another huge resource to allow us to keep going forward with our mission of protecting and restoring shorelines and waterways, while hopefully expanding what we do. Anything you can give to Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper is huge and helps us out. So go to our website, bnwaterkeeper.org/donate to make a contribution. And again, thanks to local Buffalo band Snowbelt for the music today. They have a new album out, Norris Avenue. You can find that on all the streaming services. We'll have more editions of the show on the way. Subscribe to Between Two Great Lakes to keep up to date with what we're up to. That's all for today. Be well and do good.